Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining again. This is Ken Shoulders number 25. And what it is it's a continuation of what we did last week. This is the second part of the same paper that was written by Ken Shoulders, and it's on permittivity. So I'm going to start reading the Appendix 1. There's a whole bunch of really good references. Most of them are Ken Shoulders, except for one, which is high energy ion explosion of atomic clusters number 3. The rest of them are all Ken Shoulders. We are going to go through his patents and stuff. We have them. So, Appendix 1, Black EVOs and Space Permittivity. It has long been noted that an EVO can exist in two distinct states that I have called white and black. The white state is clearly visible in that it ejects electrons, causes fluorescence of nearby dielectrics, bores through solid semiconductor material, and can ionize gas. On the other hand, the black state produces no observations that have been measured except the emission of measurable effects. Its presence is known only by the emission of a white EVO between 2 points in the EVO run that require something to have been there by reason of continuity. The reduction of expressed charge from a white EVO is a problem that has no clear solution. The black state further exacerbates this condition by essentially removing the ability to measure any expressed charge by the EV. The apparent charge reduction in the white state is about 10,000 times below the uh, below that calculated for a similar group of free electrons, while the black state is at the present limit of measurability being about 1,000,000 times below that of the expressed charge for the free electrons. Both of these observations can be made palpable in a single explanation. This explanation is also um, compatitor,
Compatible.
compatible with other bizarre observations by saying that the presence of a high value of the uncompensated charge density of an EV being a group of compressed electrons causing a shift in the permittivity or dielectric constant of space. That's a really important statement. I'm going to say that again. Um, the EV being a group of compressed electrons causing a shift in the permittivity or dielectric constant of space. Um, then there's a value. The lack of coupling to our medium of measurement can be justified. With some optimism, it could be said that the reduction of the permittivity of space could approach that of the charge shielding effect measured. This could be as great as 1,000,000 times below the norm of one, which is again really wild. All of these, all of this means that the dielectric constant of space can be modulated downward in the region of the EV, and what's that word?
A litany.
Litany of new and wondrous things can be recited. Not the least of them, not the least among these new accomplishments would be the local increase in the velocity of light and the reduction of g, so gravity. Very important statement again. Now, this is Appendix 2, and it's briefings for plans for generating uh, charge clusters by circulating and using them for millimeter uh, wave generation and inertial propulsion. Synopsis, Ken Shoulders. A program is briefly outlined showing how charge clusters, EVs, can be generated by charge circulation of the surface using a microwave drive frequencies. Using the same apparatus then causes these intense charge clusters to generate sub-millimeter wavelength harmonics of the drive frequency. With slight modification, the same basic apparatus is used to show the effects of inertial propulsion through circulation of EVs on an elongated track, which causes them to undergo a phase transformation, having different masses in each direction, hence inertial rectification. Again, a very important statement there. Um, Microwave-driven electron trap. Standard magnetron, and a magnetron is a tube that's used in a microwave oven and other things as well. Standard magnetron type of microwave generator is used in a demountable vacuum system to produce a multi-phase drive field that is coupled to the surface of the dielectric material, having a single positive electrode located at its center. And there's a picture of it in figure 1 there. The drawing of this configuration is shown in figure 1 and figure 2. By supplying a positive electrode in the center, electrons applied to the surface are attached to it unless centrifugal force caused by the microwave drive energy forces them downward and outward and away from the positive collection electrode. By judicial choice of RF radio frequency, operating frequency and amplitude, as well as apparatus size, DC potential, avoidance of a avoidance of backward wave generation, which is really important so it doesn't get canceled out, and a method for controlling stray charged stable orbits can be obtained for electrons. This mechanical gravitational analog for the system is that of rotational oscillating funnel having rolling steel balls in it. And I found that's pretty interesting. For operation at very hot or very short microwave pulse lengths, where the generation of sufficient short pulses for driving a magnetron is not possible, EV techniques using a special EV generator referred to as an E-gun can be used. A layout for this type of a device is shown in figure 3. Here the yeah, so that's figure 3. Here the EV circulates around a system of fixed electrodes, inducing a charge in them that become the drive electrodes for either of circulator or for generating very short bursts of microwave energy, having only a few cycles. EV generation. It has been found that when a significant quantity of electrons are
Sufficient.
caused.
Where sufficient.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sufficient. It has been found that when a very sufficient quantity of electrons are caused to move under the influence of a drive field across a dielectric surface having adequate secondary electron emission properties, electrons unite by an accretion process into a charge cluster or EV. Brendan, what's an accretion process?
Accretion means gaining, like when a star gains mass from accretion. So in terms of astronomy, it's when
Yeah,
an object gains mass from other objects. Other objects fall on it.
yeah,
Accretion means gaining from outside, whatever.
yeah. So that's basically what's happening with the EV is as it gets bigger and bigger, it grows essentially and it becomes more stable.
Let me just quickly look that up. So I'll just quickly look that up here, so we get it correct.
No, I think your definition was right on the money because we wanted to refer to it the way that stars work as well too, right?
Uh-huh.
Because everything is totally fractal.
Star mass accretion is when debris falls on a star and it increases its mass by accretion.
Right. Yeah, cool. Okay. On page 12 now, in high-powered microwave tubes, a window breakdown process known as a multi-pactor breakdown has been investigated by others and attributed to a charge compression process arising from a secondary electron emission. The investigators were not aware of the EV generation process, so basically saying they didn't understand it from looking at it from an EV point of view. The drive or the device shown in figure 1 and figure 2 is capable producing continuous wave drive, while the device in figure 3 is capable of producing abrupt
Three.
changes in waveforms useful for extracting EVs in an external circuit and load. So, yeah. EV science. When circulating EVs are viewed from above, the substance on which they are generated, substrate, yeah, on which they are generated, by using an electron pinhole camera, many basic factors concerning EV behavior, quantity and operation, quality and operation can be discerned. This pinhole camera has been used in the past to determine ion content, charge to mass ratio, emitted electron density, energy spread of emitted electrons, EV size and velocity, as well as determine disintegration products of EV composition.
Decomposition.
Yeah, decomposition, right. So when they disappear. The circulation technique is expected to improve on these measurements as well as added new ones. In addition to collecting basic data on EV
properties,
the arrangement of a circulator or a pinhole camera serves as an excellent millimeter wave engineering tool in that it acts as a wideband real-time oscillator scope capable of measuring amplitude and phase information in the millimeter wave region. Millimeter wave generation. When an EV is generated and driven on a surface, the guidance track can be improved by adding a mechanical groove. So this is that I was thinking about that groove. The groove is much like how when you create EVs using a pin, like a sewing needle that's hollow, the EV spirals up and comes out. Well, the groove, I think it just helps it have a track to run on essentially. So by adding a mechanical groove, the image force generated by the groove provides the function of a potential by the guide provides the function of a potential well, and that's what I mean. Kind of, we talk about hills and wells in subquantum kinetics. This is one of the spots that I noticed when I read through it the first time, that he's talking about a potential well, essentially. Potential well to lock the EV to an exact path near to the one provided by the more general drive potentials on a plane plate. It is
if
the circulator path is divided into segments of crossing 1/2 wave radiators, the passing EV excites the radiators. 10 such radiators operating at 10 gigahertz drive frequency generate a circular polarized output of 100 gigahertz. Much higher frequencies are possible by either raising the fundamental drive frequency or by adding crossing segments to the guide channel.
Okay,
yeah, so we're on 13. In a generator,
in such a generator,
it is imperative to either use only one EV in the guide at a time, or to use multiple EVs having an exact phase or timing sequence. So that just means they have to have left at exactly the same time. Amplitude modulation is not possible in this scenario without either adding or subtracting EVs from the circuit. Normally, EVs are self-generating and somewhat quantized in energy level, deriving their power to do so from the DC supply through the magnetron, which is the tube. In all such generators, it is necessary to suppress the back waves normally produced to prevent standing waves in a
concomitant.
concomitant loss of EV drive power. Inertial propulsion. There are three states of existence for electrons in EV technology. These are plain electrons, charge clusters or EVs, normally referred to as white EVs because they can be seen in many ways, and black EVs cannot be seen at all. At the present time, the only way to know of the existence of a black EV is to note the break in a white EV path. It is suspected that the black EV exists. The path can be violently shaken by an electrical field, and the black EV turns white until things quieten down again. The black EV is thus seen to be a regular white EV that has subsided in container energy level to a quiescent state, being equivalent to a laminar flow fluid state. And laminar flow is when fluids flow without turbulence, essentially. If there's turbulence, then it's not laminar flow. And it sounds like that's kind of relates back to this black and white EV. By measurement, the charge to mass ratio of electrons in EVs are the same. However, the expressed charge of an EV is over 1,000 times less than that calculated for the measured number of electrons they contain. And I found that's a really interesting number to think about, 1,000 times less. This leads to the conclusion that the mass of an EV has been lowered by a factor of 1,000 due to some yet unknown properties of the containment process. And there again,
containment, yeah, that's right. You're right.
Containment process, yeah. This data suggests it is possible to derive an inertial rectifier from the mass difference of the two states of the same device and electron. However, when the energetics of an internal rectifier in an inertial drive system using EVs and electrons is examined, it is found to be not as favorable as using a transition between white and black EV states, which also has been immeasurably large differences in mass. So the mass basically is changing. To produce unidirectional inertial thrust using EVs, it is necessary to elongate the circular path previously discussed for microwave generation into an ellipse or oval. So that's kind of interesting. Now they want to have an oval track. The two long sides of the path are aligned with the desired thrust direction. EVs pass in one direction are made white by loading them, perhaps with a half wavelength radiators. This produces a reaction or thrust on the apparatus. In the return direction, the EV is made black by the absence of disturbing fields. Yeah, resulting in no thrust production. So it only works in one direction, is what they're saying. An inertial rectification effect is thus produced using the same material flow in both directions, but having a difference in material existence phase for each direction. So I actually underline that. An inertial rectification effect is thus produced using
circulation. Where's that? Where are you now?
I'm just repeating it. I'm just repeating it again, that sentence. An inertial rectification effect is thus produced using the same material flow in both directions, but having a difference in the material existence phase for each direction. And that's the important part right there, having a difference in material existence phase for each direction. The circulation apparatus shown in Figure 1 and Figure 2 needs only slight modification to produce this test of inertial thrust. As in the test mentioned before, the backward wave must be suppressed to provide adequate EV propulsion. Summaries. It is proposed that EVs can be made by microwave circulation methods and then tested for inertial propulsion applications by using their controllable mass transformation properties. Yeah. And now we'll hand it over to Brandon. Let
Okay,
him do
thanks,
the
Ed.
last part. Thank
Okay,
you.
Appendix 3, Genesis to another life form. Travel to the stars in a tin can, not revised from um, the 22nd of November 1990 by Ken Shoulders. The notion instilled in most minds from image.
There's an echo. Somebody's got to have to shut their mic off.
Okay, I'll read it again. The notion instilled in most minds from images of Buck Rogers and Star Wars is that we will go to the stars in some kind of tin can, although it could be made of stainless steel, titanium, or whatnot. Message in this note is that there is a better way to go that is devoid of this flimsy shell and its concomitant difficulties. All life as we know it is based on atoms. The outer electrons of atoms produce the chemistry of life. A nucleus only provides the binding mechanism for orbital electrons and does not enter into the life process per se. Until now, this has been the only binding force of consequence that we have seen for electrons. This monopoly ended on Earth recently with the discovery of the binding force responsible for the EV. The second genesis on Earth can now begin, and another life form can evolve from both the broth produced by this new force, whatever it is. The universe as a whole has known about this superior form of binding long before we came along. Therefore, others in the universe likely had a head start on us, and we have some catching up to do. Later, we can go into more details of the new binding force, its manifestations, and the probabilities of it producing a viable life form. But first, let's attend the overall properties of the entity produced by this method. In all likelihood, this new life form has already begun long ago in regions of the universe unknown to us. Evolution of this pure electron entity from primordial matter would be millions of times more rapid than the evolution of biological species laden with nuclear mass compounded from the feeble binding energies of orbital electron chemistry. If such a pure electron embryo had emerged, even as recently as 100 years ago, its high evolutionary rate would have already surpassed us in every desirable aspect. Homo sapiens would be no match for Electronus rex, but neither do their territories overlap. This new order of life needs nothing coveted by man and vice versa. Don't expect belligerence. Don't expect more than a fleeting curiosity about man on the part of this new temporary resident, because it will soon be gone in search of much more exciting horizons than those afforded on dormant Earth. By the same token, it has been created elsewhere. Its visits here would be brief. We are not very interesting with our massiveness and immobility, poor communication capability, constant energy dependence, and frailty, resulting from being composed from a feeble chemical orchestration necessitated by the weak broth of the only available electron binding method available to the primitive species we are. A stronger broth comprising binding energies of the EVO has been available here all along, and probably long before biological substance was available. However, the natural home of this newly found form of binding more likely to be in the higher density and more energetic regions of the universe. The most elementary manifestation of this new substance is effervescence, effervescent in our near vacuum world, and a sheathing or clothing must be provided for the infant's forms, or they quickly decay back to oblivion. This either puts an increased burden on the experimenter determined to capture this life substance, or it lowers the probability of chance occurrence, causing a critical level of organized complexity, beyond which continued life is assured. On the other hand, the simplicity of the first phase Earth of atomic species, the union of an electron with the nucleus, is essentially guaranteed at the lower temperature and pressure on Earth. It is the higher phases of growth where the atomic structures have trouble competing with the new highly mobile and super communicative life. This super existence is the domain of the new life form. It does ask a little more attention in infancy, but given this, it will carry on robustly. Stepping back to the discovery which makes man a participant in this second genesis on Earth, we see only electrons huddled together, forming an EV, which must be handled with tender care. The life-giving sheath is not yet in place, save for the surround of guides made from material of the old kind. This protection is adequate for simplistic electronic functions, emanating those played by solid-state electronic devices, but not for the new game of life to come. The sheath around a complex EV organism is a supreme shield. It protects it from itself. The naked EV will commit suicide trying to do what is being to do. It will die by radiating its energy through accelerated electron motion. It must act in concert with other EVs devoted to protection to suppress this radiation below its annihilation level. Once the electronic mortal coil is in place, the organization contained within would endure virtually forever, because the binding energies are far above those of even the best chemistry. This level lies between that of chemical energies and nuclear forces, a region easily accessible to laboratory implementation, where much has already been learned with very primitive apparatus. Soon, the experimental method will use tools fashioned from EVs as a means for gaining greater access to the secrets of organization. When this is done, we will enter a zone of electronic construction technique where normal laboratory apparatus will diminish and new tools fashioned in a bootstrap manner will become increasingly EV-like. This is the precursor to true electronic manufacturing, where no mechanical or chemical tools are needed to make an all-electronic device. When we pass through this gateway, the speed of design, iteration, we're getting some feedback somewhere.
Yeah, I think Michael needs to shut his camera or his mic off.
When we pass through this gateway, the speed of design, iteration will increase in a manifold fashion, and results will pour in at a dizzying rate for poor Homo sapiens. The burden of sorting good news will be passed on to our newfound friend, and it is sure to eagerly accept the challenge. Coupling into the basic fabric of space, the vacuum will provide energy and locomotion. This coupling is inherently provided by the increased high-frequency cutoff limit of the stiff EV structure. All atomic devices are fundamentally prohibited from capturing substantial energy from vacuum fluctuations because of the low stiffness of the outer electron binding mechanism.
Interesting. Wow.
The cube law dependence on energy versus frequency makes the vacuum fluctuation energy too puny for use at the cutoff frequency of electrons bound in outer atom orbits, but is more than sufficient for operation at the EV binding energies. Once this fabric of space is grasped by electronic coupling from an EV, it is useful for both energy input and propulsion by only a slight change in the EV structure. Isotropic access to the vacuum gives energy only, while anisotropic capture gives energy along with propulsion. Grabbing onto an energy-dense medium with a distorted container is all that is needed to develop thrust. These effects are easily seen in even the most primitive EV experiments. At times, energy conversion and thrusting even interfere with subtler processes and must be suppressed to investigate the weaker process. Growth will continue past the point where man can no longer assist. We will watch in amazement as our offspring outgrows us by increasing sensor capability beyond our wildest dreams. By assimilating new knowledge into vast stores, which are electronically quick, and by communicating with everything around it and moving its very being at electronic rates, instead of using more cumbersome motive methods caused by our ponderous construction, stemming from the only binding method we had available up till now. After having been over and over the above citations for many years, I now conclude that the main problem is how to couple our own essence into the new structures and romp through the universe with them, or it. I have no fear of coming back for a homecoming, as I believe all advanced forms of life are undoubtedly capable of reversion for nostalgic reasons. We can't presently do the trick very well because we are one of the lowest forms of life. All of this comes from just a new method of sticking electrons together, Like it or not, this single act irreversibly brings Genesis 2 with it. We are on the way. Let's leave the tin cans at home and join the EV starship.
Hmm, interesting statement. And of course, we know that that's how propulsion is made to happen. So, yeah, there are EV starships, I guess is what we're trying to say.
Okay, Appendix 4, Towards Complex Systems, excerpt from Reference 6, written in 1961. Part 3, Plasma Machines. This is the most fantastic tale. I will discuss how to make an intelligent organization without any parts at all. It may turn out that we will not be able to see the machine, not because it is small, but because it is so very dense. If the machine resembles anything, it would most resemble a plasma. The fourth, it would most resemble a plasma, the fourth state of matter, and the most abundant in the universe, I'm told. Present gas plasma structures are not very well ordered, but they can be as noisy as the core of a star or as quiet as any low noise amplifier. They can be broadbanded up to X-ray energies, or they can laze with a very narrow line width. They are indeed versatile. Plasma organizations would seem to take on almost unlimited portions, both in size and organizational complexity. They range from tiny microplasmas to galactic proportions. I'm primarily interested in man or machine-made plasmas, organized so as to constitute intelligent machines. The area of plasma organization we must work in is compounded of a branch of fluid dynamics, characterized by nonlinear phenomena that lead to considerable complexity. This enormous range of phenomena leads potentiality to great structural richness, provided that we can organize the process to the critical level of complexity, which perhaps separates man from other animals, beyond which the machine can assist itself at organizing at a rate greater than the rate provided by more limited man. To digress a moment, this is my opinion that the highest type of organizations do now exist in some of the high energy density and gaseous regions of the universe, not occupied by Galatanians.
Gen, gen,
How do you
gen,
say that?
gelatinous.
Gelatinous. Sorry,
Uh,
gelatinous
Happiness.
creatures.
yeah,
What? What did you say?
I think that's right.
Gelatinous.
Gelatinous
Gelatinous.
creatures.
Gelatinous creatures such as ourselves, but rather electronic beings that have little regard for high temperature and its tendency to disorganize. So the question is, how do we get started and take advantage of all these potentialities? I would not advocate launching directly into the plasma morass, but rather beginning with simple particle optics and condensed state electrode material, and then gradually removing the solid supporting structures and replacing them with supporting fields as our knowledge increased, so as to know how to do this. In the beginning, I would treat the problem as a large-scale geometry problem, not as a physics problem. As a specific example, I believe that a machine organized on basis of a periodic particle optics scheme, similar to the array shown in Figure 21. Look at that. You've seen that. Figure 21. Okay, so it's not here. Okay, so where am I now? Figure whoopsie, no, I'm done here. Figure 21. So as a specific example, I believe that a machine organized on basis of a periodic particle optics scheme, similar to the array shown in Figure 21, will do much toward simplifying components and the specification of interconnections in a complex machine. In the simplest case, the machine should be an iterative array of components that are isolated from each other, but have the ability to intercommunicate via sinuous electron paths. The components must be able to launch, absorb, receive, and steer electrons or groups of electrons. Such organization would allow the creation of order within the machine at the dictate of other organized areas. This newly made order could propagated physically. This newly made order could propagated physically through the machine and then be destroyed if found wanting. The components could then be used again for higher levels of organization. This arena concept, using fundamental elements at fixed or movable loci, but having flexible connectivity and reversible change of state without leaving a residue, would greatly modify most present concepts of machine organization. By now, you must realize that I am principally guided by what is scientifically required for the electronic structure itself without particular concern for commercial survival. It will be a long time to the product phase of this kind of machine. We will discuss several things that bear upon the problem, but we will not be able to give you a solution to the problem in this paper. We will discuss some preliminary results with the particle optics simulator that uses little steel balls instead of electrons. We'll clarify the field emission devices. We will claim that the field emission devices could be used to fabricate a wireless machine using an interesting organization found with the balls. We will mention some experiments in electrodynamic particle refinement and imply that threading electrons through these charged particles would be equivalent to threading through fixed field structures, that a complete machine could be built on this principle. To begin then, a traveling wave tube has been developed employing periodic electron optics, in which the beam is made to slalom down a row of guiding electrodes in the fashion shown in Figure 21. This basic method of beam guidance is the fundamental starting point in our periodic particle optics system. But even though electrons have been known to perform many wondrous tasks, I have elected to simulate the electron ballistic problems with steel balls, so that it is easier to follow the myriad tricks they play in such a low-loss periodic system. As stated earlier, we need only a few basic effects to do all that electronic data processing is to do. We must begin with a basic nonlinearity that results in gain under the proper conditions. The gain must be especially distributed over space to provide for interconnectivity. The interconnection can now be fed back around the gain element through an inversion to produce storage. These basic elements can be united to form a system as vast as the imagination can allow. We have explored the possibility of obtaining these basic elements with a uniform and static array of charged electrodes through which electrons are guided in accordance with ballistic laws. Since it is easier to simulate electron motion with small steel balls, we have devised an apparatus from the principles described by Moore and shown systematically in Figure 22. This apparatus is capable of keeping a magnetized steel ball in constant velocity motion in a uniform electric field by supplying rolling friction losses through the alternating current magnetic drive fields. By supplying rolling friction losses through the alternating current magnetic drive fields. When electric fields are impressed upon the ball by the electrode array, the ball describes a path very similar to that of an electron in a similar electrostatic field. Even space charge conditions are simulated. It was necessary to make a shock tube with a very small nose so that balls could be launched at any desired angle and velocity from an arbitrary point in the matrix or field determining electrodes. Figure 23 shows several balls being shot at 6 inches per second and photographed on a stroboscopically to determine the angular and velocity spreads. It seems that the launcher is well within the limits needed for this work. Several simple tests were run to determine whether or not standard particle optic laws apply to rolling steel balls. One such test is shown in Figure 24, where a fixed DC potential was applied to a wire electrode. Balls were rolled past the electrode at various spacings and the deflection angle measured. Normal electrostatic laws were found to describe the performance. It was necessary to test the momentary velocity limits that a ball can experience from electrostatic deceleration without falling out of synchronism with the magnetic drive fields. By charging a glass surface in an irregular fashion so that the balls could experience a wide range of turning radii, it was possible to photograph a complex orbit structure, as shown in Figure 25. A velocity range of over 1 to 3 can be accommodated by the drive system, and this is more than adequate for our purposes. Fixed electrodes can be used for these measurements, but they interfere with the trajectory photography. In our brief experience with this simulation method, We have found several encouraging things that relate to electron beam systems and therefore guide us toward their development. The persistent current memory has been made in which a ball orbits from one to many electrodes. The stability of a slalom orbit has been changed and the path of particles steered with changes in electrode potentials, as well as with effective potential changes caused by the appearance of a nearby particle path. These effects produce the gain in the system by modifying the stability criterion for the propagating particles. Steering of a particle to the alternative path has been caused by both charge change on electrodes and by space charge change from other particle paths. We have thus seen the essential elements. We have thus seen the essential elements, namely gain, interconnectivity, and storage in this simulator for electrodynamic problems. We have also seen numerous effects that cause us to ponder before jumping into a large system. We have seen bulls stub their toe on a speck of dirt, totally destroyed their desired orbit or path. We have seen high-order modes excited in otherwise useful low-order and simple modes, giving rise to a host of side effects that may never be as useful as they are beautiful. There is very often the implication of a degree of complexity in the orbits that I may never understand. When working in air, we are either working very near to breakdown potentials or at adequate ball velocities, or are working at velocities so low that surface imperfections predominate. In our machine organization studies, we are presently in a quandary as to whether to go on to a simulator with 10,000 intersections or abandon the simulator and try real-life electrons. Either route will present us with a great many problems. Whichever route we choose, we should eventually arrive at a point of being able to adapt field emission devices with their free electron emitting capabilities to this method of organization. A few things will have to be added before the system is useful. A regeneration system will be needed to keep a storage ring in the field state when desired, if indeed this persistent current storage shows any advantages over conventional charge storage for this condensed state or solid component array. If we succeed in understanding complex electron organizations in condensed state arrays, then we could move on toward replacing the charged wires with point charges, such as protons. This will be a large step. The basis for taking such a step has been laid by first being able to form a crystallized array of charged particles in electrodynamic particle confinement apparatus, such as the one used by Wuka et al. Of STL, as shown in figure 26. This apparatus is to confine and support charged particles ranging in size from electrons to several micron diameter particles using only electrostatic fields. The stability criterion is determined by the magnitude and frequency of the applied DC and AC potentials. We use a similar principle in our quadrupole mass spectrometer, except that the ions are moving at a fairly high drift velocity.
Which Ken designed, by the way, that quadruple mass spectrometer for STL, I believe.
As shown in the top picture of figure 27, the STL device made it possible to freeze an array of aluminium particles large enough to see by microscopy and thus verify the particle motions. The lower picture in figure 27 shows the array The lower picture in figure 27 shows the array being squeezed down in size by changes in confinement field parameters. Figure 28 shows a single particle motion while deep within the region of stability. So I'll write that again. Sorry. Figure 28 shows a single particle motion while deep within the region of stability. The confinement
Um, maybe I'll.
So I'll just finish off. The figure 28 shows a single particle motion while deep within the region of stability. Let me just turn this off. I can't work out how to turn it off. This confinement apparatus has also contained both ions and electrons simultaneously, giving a visible glow discharge at pressures of 10 to the minus 8 millimeters per millimeters of mercury, 10 to the minus 8 millimeters of mercury. Of course, this discharge indicates excessive disorder, undesired interactions. Our job is to introduce electrons into the ion lattice and promote more organization of the kind that will be a useful data processing machine. By learning the laws of organization through fixed structures, we may eventually be able to organize plasma structures to the point that they provide enough inherent stability to become their own container. The number of interactions possible in a plasma system, the speed and energy density of these interactions make it highly desirable to seek a way of organizing them. Nothing would be more desirable to me as a researcher on intelligent structure organization than to dispense with the need for tediously carving microscopic shapes by taking advantage of almost infinite elasticity and plasticity of plasma structures by organizing our machines in the large and then organize our machines in the large and then squeezing the structure down to size by changing the confinement parameters. I would like to end with a quote by Theoro, who said, if you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan, for going through that. It's interesting that part that you read. He's sort of talking about what are the possibilities of a intelligent plasma life form, I guess, is kind of what he was getting to there. And the first part, talking about black EVs and white EVs and how you can create kind of a track for them to move on and change their forms and then do useful things like inertial rectification. And rectification is just means that everything is flowing in one direction. We use rectifiers when we design electronics, and they just allow everything just to flow one way. It's like a one-way valve, essentially. Yeah.
This is the one I was going to read out for just as a summary, as a kind of introduction to EVOs and Ken Shoulder's work. I was going to read this out, just it'll be sort of reasonably brief.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay, Eddie? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
just as a summary or an overview, and just as an introduction, because when you're reading Ken Shoulder's, what is not always for people unfamiliar with it is sometimes you're thinking, what's going on here? Anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
this might help people to get some clarity on what an EVO is. What is an EVO from Ken Shoulder's work? Why are they important? Can new technology like free energy be made out of it, from it?
Mm-hmm.
So GBT replied, an EVO, exotic vacuum object, also called a charge cluster, is a phenomena discovered and studied in detail by Kenneth R. Shoulders, an experimental physicist and innovator who worked at MIT, Stanford, and SRI International.
And Brendan, I'll just add that with the last Chris Beskar interview, I asked Chris if Ken had been at Area 51 with him and Pete Peterson, and he said that he had. So that's also where Ken
Shoulders.
Shoulders was. Yeah.
What is an EVO? In simple terms, an EVO is a tiny coherent cluster of electrons, and possibly ions, that behaves like a self-contained entity. It's often observed as a micron-sized or even submicron-sized structure that can move through solid materials, generate anomalous effects like transmutation of elements, leave strange tracks and craters in target materials, exhibit behavior that implies it is drawing energy from the vacuum or ether.
Mm-hmm.
These clusters are highly charged, often with many billions of electrons. They appear to have a kind of solitonic or plasma-like structure,
Mm-hmm.
but stable, compact, and self-organized. Why are EVOs important? Ken Shoulders believed EVOs could be a gateway to new physics, especially in understanding vacuum energy, coherent charge behavior. Here's why they matter.
Wow.
Anomalous energy effects. EVOs appear to interact with matter in ways that release more energy than classical physics would expect, hinting at access to zero-point energy quantum fluctuations or quantum fluctuations.
Vacuum fluctuations.
Sorry. 0-point energy or vacuum fluctuations. 2. Transmutation and alchemy-like effects. EVO impacts have reportedly led to elemental changes, transmutation, without the high energy nuclear signatures typical of fission or fusion. This suggests low energy nuclear reactions or cold fusion may be involved. Number 3, free energy potential. Since EVOs can extract or release energy in anomalous ways, Shoulders and others speculated that they might be harnessed for free energy or over unity devices, systems that produce more energy than they consume from conventional sources. Number 4, miniaturized plasma tech. EVOs behave like intelligent microplasmoids. That this could revolutionize microelectronics, advanced propulsion, and material science. Can EVOs lead to free energy technology? Possibly, and this is where the excitement lies. Ken Shoulders believe that EVOs could be created and manipulated using relatively simple circuits, extract energy from the vacuum or ether, act as mini energy converters or amplifiers. He envisions small devices capable of EVO generation, movement, and controlled interaction with matter too. Produce energy, perform work, e.g., bore through materials, induce novel nuclear reactions. While mainstream science has not embraced his findings, many alternative energy researchers believe EVOs are one of the most promising leads in the quest for clean, limitless energy.
Wow.
EVOs and other paradigms. Ken Shoulders' EVOs intersect intriguingly with subquantum kinetics. Paul Laviolette both describe subatomic processes involving vacuum structuring.
Awesome.
Holographic ether theories. EVOs may be visible signs of an underlying ether dynamics. Plasma cosmology and electric universe models. EVOs could be mini analogues of cosmic plasma behaviors.
Definitely.
UFO propulsion speculation. Some believe EVOs, some believe craft use controlled EVOs or related plasma effects.
Definitely.
Final thoughts. EVOs could be the tip of the iceberg in a whole new class of physical phenomena. While still fringe and under-researched, their repeatable, observable behavior in the lab suggests potential applications in energy generation, matter transmutation, advanced propulsion, biological or environmental remediation. Shoulders' work remains pioneering and largely untapped, but in the context of the growing interest in disclosure, advanced tech and free energy is more relevant than ever. Would you like a summary of how to create or observe EVOs based on Shoulders' experiments? I said, yes, please. Okay, so let's just go through this. I thought we were near the end. ChatGPT said, great, here's a summary of how Ken Shoulders created and observed EVOs in the lab based on his patents, papers, and experimental notes. These setups are simple in principle, but involve high voltage, fast discharge systems that must be handled with care.
Mm-hmm.
How to create and observe EVOs, exotic vacuum objects. Core components of the setup. Number one, sharp cathode tip, typically made of tungsten, titanium, or another conductive, robust metal. The tip is crucial for field emission. It emits electrons when a strong electric field is applied. The sharper the tip, nano microscale, the better the emission of EVO formation.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, dielectric or insulating layer. EVOs form more easily when the tip is near or facing a dielectric, like glass, mica, alumina, or even plastic. Some setups include EVO movement across an insulating surface. Pulse power source. A fast, high-voltage pulse system is used, often in the kilovolts range, e.g. 1 to 10 kilovolts or more. The discharge must be rapid, creating a sharp, high-energy electron emission. Acid discharge through an inductor or spark gap is commonly used. Number four, vacuum or low-pressure environment, optimal but helpful. While EVOs can form in air, better results often come in partial vacuum or low-pressure gases like argon.
Mm-hmm.
This helps prevent arcing and allows clearer EVO motion. Target or observation plate. EVOs strike a nearby surface, metal or dielectric, leaving behind tracks or craters. These impacts can be observed under a microscope or electron microscope. Basic EVO generation process. Charge the capacitor to high voltage 1 to 10 kilovolts plus. Number 2, trigger a fast discharge through a sharp tip through a grounded target. Number 3, observe EVO formation. Look for luminous spots, fast-moving pulses. Under the microscope, examine the target for pitting, craters, strange marks, or even signs of transmutation. Shoulders often use setups like pulse generator, sharp tip, approximately 1 millimeter from dielectric surface or target. Signs that EVOs were created. Crater chains, microscopic round holes in a line or clustered patterns. Transmutation residues, unusual elemental composition in impact zones, e.g. gold appearing where there was none. Optical flashes, brief bursts of lightning during discharge. Unusual motion. EVOs can move in curved paths, even against expected electromagnetic fields. Sources by Ken Shoulders. So this is where you can find Ken Shoulders' work. EV, A Tale of Discovery, his seminal self-published book describing experiments, philosophy, and implications.
Which we'll be going through pretty soon here.
US patents. So this is US patents. One of them is energy conversion using high discharge, energy conversion using high charge density, and method of apparatus for production and directed motion of EVOs.
And we're going to go through those patents as well.
Technical papers often hosted in Rex Research and other alternative science sites. Charge clusters in action, energy conversion using EVOs, transmutation by EVOs. Important cautions. High voltage danger. This is not beginner's electronics. Shocks can be lethal. Unknown reactions. Some experiments have shown elemental changes or high energy releases, so shielding and careful measurement are key. Reducibility. While Shoulders' results were consistent, replication can be tricky without precision and proper equipment. EVO research today. Independent researchers like Dr. Mark Leclerc and George Egley, and some low-energy nuclear reaction researchers have followed up on Shoulders' work. There's also crossover interest from LENER, which is low-energy nuclear reaction, cold fusion experiments, plasma and condensed matter physics, breakthrough energy researchers, e.g. Sapphire Project. Would you like to see a schematic diagram or simplified build plan based on Shoulders' experimental design? The answer is yes, and here it is.
Yeah, so here we have the sharp tip that they're talking about, that they'd like it as sharp as possible, even down to very, very small micro machining. There is a size that's perfect size for EVOs. Then the EVO is generated, and there's that dielectric so there's the cathode where it leaves from, and the dielectric is known as the anode, where it comes to. And when we design vacuum tubes, we're using all of these technologies, essentially cathodes and anodes. Magnetron is a perfect example of that. So this is really cool information from ChatGPT.
Yep.
And everything that I see there is stuff that resonates with me. It's excellent. Like you said, sometimes it's a really great thing to ask it questions, because it goes straight to all the things that make most normal people understand it. and in the terminology and whatnot, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Brendan, for reading.
Okay.
Um, does anybody have any comments or questions before we stop the recording?
But another one. We went on for nearly an hour and a half. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's stop the recording. Thank you for everyone. Actually, next week, before we stop, next week I have Ken Shoulders number 26 is going to come out of this excellent book. And there is a whole chapter on charge clusters and talks about Ken Shoulders a lot. So I think that's what we're going to do next time.
okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
thanks for joining. Yes, then. Bye.